today we're going to be talking about domain and range of continuous graphs. I know we've talked about this a little bit before you went on break, but we're going to review it and then we're going to add on to it. So I wanted to review it because you may have forgotten some things over break. So for domain, you want to scan your pencil left to right. It helps if I can write correctly. Left to right along the x-axis. And for range, you want to scan your pencil top to bottom along the y-axis. So for domain, you're looking at your x values, and range, you're going to look at y values. So for number 1 here, we're going to scan from left to right along the x-axis. So if you look at this, it crosses the x-axis at every point. There's a point for every x value on here. So that means my domain is all real numbers, or this fancy looking R. And my range, let's zoom in just a little bit so we can see a little better. If I take my pencil or my laser pointer and go down from top to bottom, if you look, it stops right here. So for this, everything is greater than or equal to y, because we're looking at range, so we're going to use y, and it's greater than this point right here, which happens to be -2. So that is how you do domain and range for a function like that. So let's move over to number 2 here. So we want to do domain and range for this guy. So this circle, we're going to take and go from left to right along my x-axis. So as I go from left to right, it stops at this point right here. Starts there and stops there. So x is between -3 and +3. So if I want to look at that's for domain. So if I wanted to look at my y-axis, I want to take my pencil and scan from top to bottom of my graph. And you see that it stops right here, starts right there, it stops right there. So that is that point right there and that right there. So y is between 3 and -3. And you put the less than or equal to signs or the greater than or equal to signs. Just kidding, they're less than or equal to. Because they are closed points. If they were open circles, we would just use the less than. So moving on to number 3. So as I take my laser pointer across the x-axis, there's an x value, there's a y value for every x value that my laser pointer covers. So we call that domain, and that is all real numbers. And then range, take the y's, and although it looks like it could stop here, our graph just doesn't go far enough this way, in that direction. So my range is also all real numbers in this case. If you want to think about it, look at the arrows. The arrows go in both directions. So that means it's going to cover everything. So why don't you try 4? So you're going to take your pencil and scan from left to right along the x-axis, and it looks like your domain is all real numbers because it covers everything. And your range, as you go from top to bottom, doesn't cover quite everything, but gets pretty close. So right there, so y is, since it's going down, it's less than or equal to 4, because the y value of that point is 4. So why don't you try 5, and then we'll go over it. So, for domain, you're going to scan from left to right. And it doesn't quite, it stops right here. Starts right there and stops over here. So, your domain is between, x is between -1, because that's that point right there on the x, and 5. And then for your range, you're going to go up and down the y-axis. But it stops right here and right there. So it's between these 2 points right here. So y is between. The -1's going to go on the bottom. So -3 on the left side. And then 3 on top. One more. So, as I take my thing across the x-axis, it covers all of them. And it has arrows on both. So what did I say earlier about arrows when there are 2 arrows? Domain is all real numbers. You don't have to do both. You can just either write all real numbers or the R. You don't have to do both. And then as I take my... That didn't work. As I take my laser pointer up and down the y-axis, it's fine. It crosses all of it. So it's also all real numbers.